word lesbian has sort of become a dirty word. Patriarchy is even more insidious than I thought. Socioeconomic context, of course. I feel like I should put my queer earrings in. Queerings, if you will. Why hello there, welcome back to my channel. My name's Tallulah, if you did not know. Today, as you can tell by the title, I am going to be talking about compulsory heterosexuality. I want to preface this by saying that I'm not the first person to say any of this. Most of what I'm saying comes from an essay written by Adrienne Rich in 1980 titled Compulsory Heterosexuality and the Lesbian Experience. It's an amazing essay, so I'm going to link that below if you want like the full in-depth situation from the woman who sort of, I don't know, she's like the bedrock of this kind of discourse, I guess. This video is not going to be super like the last one I did because that was very much just like my personal experience, more kind of chatty, unscripted. I do have notes for this and it's, for want of a better word, gonna look at the topic academically. Don't let that scare you off. I just find it really interesting and I got most of the information from an academic essay. As well as reading that essay, I watched a couple of other YouTube videos just made by other internet gals, and I will link those below because those have definitely helped kind of me understand the topic in a more kind of real worldy way. I've never really done a video like this before, but I find the topic really interesting and I couldn't find as much stuff on the internet about it as I wanted to, so I thought I'd make another thing for the internet about it. One of my friends said she really liked the first episode of Queer Corner, but that my room was a mess. I have not tidied my room, but I have got this string of fairy lights. So without further ado, let's talk comp het. First of all, what is it? Compulsory heterosexuality can be defined as the socially enforced idea that heterosexuality is someone's only option. Who does it affect? The definition doesn't say that it can't be experienced by men, but it's mostly been researched and discussed in relation to women because it's so heavily linked to misogyny and lesbophobia. Adrienne Rich in her essay also brings up the complexity of comp het for non-binary people who were assigned female at birth, because obviously comp het is so binary by nature, it doesn't allow space for non-binary genders, so that's just a kind of extra element of gross binary crap. Where does it come from? Why? Socioeconomic context, of course. There are so many strands that come together to form comp het throughout the long history of misogyny and lesbophobia, so I can't talk about every single one of them, but the reason it's so complicated is because it's so linked to misogyny and lesbophobia, which are both incredibly complex, multifaceted things on their own, but I'm kind of gonna just dip my toe into the water of the kind of context that leads to comp het. The first one is economic. Historically, and obviously still in places in the present day, women have been economically dependent on men because we've been excluded from education, the professions, and funneled into the unpaid labour of making a household and raising children. That was, and in some places still is, the only option, so obviously that's the most obvious example of compulsory heterosexuality, because for women who perhaps weren't actually attracted to men, it was really difficult without huge amounts of luck or struggle to actually set up a household without men, whether in groups or in romantic pairings. Women have obviously succeeded in doing that in far greater numbers than mainstream history gives credit for. So much of lesbian history has been erased, which I will come on to later, but for the great majority of women it was now impossible to set up a household and survive on a purely economic basis without men. Culturally speaking, comp het has also been built on and supported by kind of art and media, and when I say media, I don't just mean kind of present day stuff, I mean like plays and stories and old wives' tales and fables and all the kind of forms of art, songs, poems that have existed kind of across history and across cultures. The vast majority of representations of sex, love, marriage, partnership have been of heterosexual couples, and the most obvious thing presented by that is that when that is the vast majority of all the kind of artistic, cultural input you're getting, it seems like, well, that's the majority of everything, that's all I'm seeing. I guess that's all there is. Building on that, there are certain representations common across kind of art and media of straight relationships that are kind of janky and lead to kind of the acceptance of straight relationships by women who perhaps aren't actually attracted to men. An obvious example is porn. Loads of mainstream porn, especially at the time when Adrienne Rich was writing in 1980, depicts sex as something for men to enjoy and something for women to have done to them, for them to just put up with and perhaps even perform the enjoyment of. So that is changing slowly as the porn industry is kind of catching up with fourth wave feminism. but it's still definitely something that promotes the idea that women should just put up with heterosexual relationships, even if that's not their actual sexuality, if that makes sense. Another example is the way films and books and songs portray falling in love with a man as the kind of pinnacle of a woman's existence and waiting for that Prince Charming as a woman's kind of one mission and that she'll finally be complete when she gets that. That is obviously again just suggesting that, okay, you're a woman, you've got to wait for a man, and then you'll be happy. Another cultural strand of comp het is the fetishization of lesbians in the media, and especially in porn, for the male gaze. I think like so many members of the LGBT community, I've heard people say this before, but the lesbian label has sort of been reduced to like a list of sex acts. I think lots of people wouldn't like to admit it, but I think the word lesbian has sort of become a dirty word in people's minds, and I think that's probably because of the years and years and years for which men have made lesbian porn for men, and I think that has contributed to the idea that, I don't know, there's kind of something perverse and unnatural and just like sexually crazed about being a lesbian when there just isn't that around the word gay, and that's why I think so many people would feel more comfortable either identifying or describing other people as gay, other women as gay, even if they perhaps self-identify as a lesbian more specifically, that's just the word they prefer. Another thing which is cultural but kind of more specific is the kind of systematic erasure of lesbian history. I think in the past I've sort of been under the impression that lesbians were just under the radar and there just weren't many of them in history, I guess. But the fact of the matter is so much lesbian history has just been erased. Obviously it was a tiny minority in terms of, I don't know, the global population. There were women who managed to live together in households without men, whether that was kind of in a kind of nunnery type situation that was more sort of marriage resistance under the guise of religion, or in romantic pairings where they managed to live without men. Economically they made that work, socially they made that work. There is so much more history there that is just not visible and is not there in kind of popular history, popular culture, and there's really not enough being done to make up for lost time in current media forms. Like, we have Call Me By Your Name. Where's Call Me By Your Name with lesbians? I really just, you know, I'm not saying remake that movie with two women, because that would absolutely not work. No way would two women spend a 2.5-hour movie barely exchanging words with each other. I'm sorry, they'd be like chatting shit about their star signs like 5 minutes in. I'm just saying. I'm not even gonna get into the lesbian films on Netflix. It's actually, you know, there are a couple I like, but it's just not enough there. It's just not enough there. I'm aware that all of that probably sounded really disjointed and confusing, so what does it actually mean? What does any of this mean for anybody? Well, obviously it doesn't mean that all women are just repressed lesbians who actually hate men and have just been brainwashed into being straight. That is absolutely not what it means. What it does mean though is that lots of women who actually aren't attracted to men spend a much longer time coming to terms with that because they've been, for want of a better word, brainwashed into heterosexuality, or like performing heterosexuality, for all the many reasons I've listed and for all the many more reasons that you will see if you read Adrienne Rich's 1980 essay, Compulsory Heterosexuality and the Lesbian Experience. Adrienne Rich brings up that far more lesbians have been with men than gay men have been with women, and I think that's because, like I said before, men are given primacy in sexual situations, whereas women are kind of just given the back seat, like, just chill, just be there, take what you're given. And I think because of that, perhaps men kind of think earlier and more definitively about the kind of hypotheticals of it, like, would I actually enjoy that? Would I actually see myself being with that gender? Do I think that would actually, like, fulfill me? Because men are taught from a very young age that it is their right to get what they want sexually and romantically, whereas women are taught from a very young age that it's our job to take what we're given sexually and romantically. I think often that's why it takes a lot longer for women who are attracted to women to be like, oh, I don't really like men that much. Basically, all in all, I think this topic is so fascinating. I love talking about and learning about and reading about misogyny and queer theory and all that good stuff. And it was really amazing for me to discover this essay from like, shit, 40 years ago? 40 years ago! To discover this essay from 40 years ago and have it just be like, oh my god, that's so cool, I've never thought about that, that's amazing, wow, the patriarchy is even more insidious than I thought. I hope that made any kind of sense at all. I don't know if it did. If you want a more rounded, more probably coherently academic explanation of this concept, then definitely read the essay. It's not super long for an essay, but I think it's like, you know, it's a decent length, but I think it's worth reading if you are interested in this for sure. I did enjoy making this, I enjoyed making my notes. I've definitely been doing more research on this than I have my actual degree. If anyone would like me to make a video on this topic, sort of delving into it more, like I did in my first Queer Corner video where I talked about kind of my personal experience, if you would like a video that's more kind of linked to me, a bit more chatty, a bit more, what does compat mean to me? If you want one of those videos, then I could for sure make one further down the line. I just thought for now I'd like to experiment with making this style of video. I hope you enjoyed it, I hope you learned something, and I hope this hasn't ended up being horrendously long. I hope everyone's surviving in this current situation that exists, which I'm not going to name. I hope everyone's doing alright and isn't being negatively affected by it too much. That's it from me. I'm sending everybody lots of love. I will see you very soon. Bye!